Once Human is about to get some major changes. I'm going to go over each and every single one of those, as well as some brand new store updates and refresh, on top of everything else that does include a new developer talk, which will lead us further into an update preview, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, World Utopia here, back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Once Human. So first up here, we are getting some new updates, and that does coincide with some changes. And the first one here is an update preview, while we pair that with an early access announcement. So first up here, in case you didn't know, Raid Zone does officially launch on July 29th. I'll go over what servers are opening up when, but essentially it does launch July 29th at 4 AM Pacific time. First though, if you aren't familiar, Raid Zone is a hardcore PvP survival mode. It kind of is akin to like a Rust. It has equal starts with everyone beginning fresh with no pay to win. It is unrestricted, unlike Prison vs. Clash, meaning that anyone can raid you anywhere that you're at. There are no safe zones even while you're offline, but that does allow you to build up to 3 territories to defend your loot. Although, if you do end up getting taken over and eliminated, if you are raided, they can take everything. So do be wary on that. That's why it's kind of akin to a hardcore survival like Rust. Now, first up here, they wanted to go over competitive balance, and they do have a fair play focus here. They do mention that higher tier weapons don't have any blueprint effects or mods. So essentially, higher tiers just offer better stats only. So essentially, there are no blueprint stars, so if you have any 6-star weapons, those don't matter in this. It is just to the weapon itself, with it being a higher tier weapon will give you better handling and better stats. Armor is essentially equal HP for everybody, so there are no HP stats, where the higher tiers of armor just equal better shield bonuses. Again, same thing there, the stars for the blueprints don't matter. Deviations do have some unique PvP skills that tie directly into this mode, and those are unlocked with each wipe. Again, they preface the last thing here that all loot can be stolen at any point in time. That includes all items and resources, yes, even your weapon and gear. Although you cannot bring anything over from regular servers into Raid Zone. Again, this is a spin-off mode, it's completely separate. And actually, speaking of that, in the menu now, you're kicked over to an entirely different section or menu. I thought it was going to be a different client, but I do think they kind of kept it smart, like the Warzone tactic, where it's just a different button to swap over. And essentially, yeah, as soon as you click this button on the top right, you'll switch over into the Raid Zone client, quote-unquote. So you can't bring anything into Raid Zone, and you can't take anything out. Now again, as I said previously, it technically does launch July 29th after 4 AM Pacific time. However, this actually does correspond with the first server openings and then the first reset. So they have done a bi-weekly server only at launch here. Those do reset every 14 days, with the reset happening from Wednesday to Thursday, the first one starting on August 13th, meaning that it will reset on August 11th, but then the new server will open up on August 13th. They also are going to do a new server naming format. So you'll see here, it's going to say bi-weekly and then the population tag and then the ID. So the example here is bi-weekly high pop A001, but essentially it will probably have some sort of name like Raid Zone 001. But now they will include a population tag onto the actual server, letting you know if it is high pop or low pop, if you want more PvP or less. And again, corresponding here to the server opening and launch of Raid Zone, that first one is happening post-patch. So whenever maintenance is done, it could be done 15 minutes early or it could be done 2 hours late. That's essentially why it doesn't really have an official time there, or at least for when it's launching. Those actually apply across the board here. So for US, EU, LATAM, which is Brazil, or even SEA, those all will launch at the exact same time, which is July 29th at 4 AM Pacific time, or 6 AM Central, 7 AM Eastern. Again, there could be variance there depending on when it actually does launch. Now, the first reset is a bit different here. That will actually happen on the corresponding local times, again, because some are going to be August 12th and some August 11th. So the first reset will be August 11th at 4 PM Pacific time for NA, and then the next server will open August 13th at 4 AM Pacific time. Again, those times do vary and dates do vary because of depending on the time zone there. They do mention that additional servers will open up on August 11th for all regions. So even if you don't make it into the July 29th one, you can still participate in a next server opening. This just corresponds to the first bi-weekly opening. As I mentioned, for transfers and account rules, they do have some stuff here on what actually does transfer to Raid Zone back and forth. Cosmetic and shop items are now shared completely. This was something that wasn't the case when it first launched, but they did patch it over time. Gear, blueprints, and mods are not shared though, so depending if you play Raid Zone and the other one, you cannot share those across the board. And as I mentioned, you cannot import from Eternal Land and the Space-Time Backpack. and there is no exit card needed to leave a raid zone, so you can just leave on your own. You don't actually need a consumable there. As I mentioned, with this update, that does coincide with some buffs and reworks. These actually do apply to deviations, and there are quite a few of them. Polar Jelly actually gets a massive buff here from 1 to 2 uses, meaning you can cast it twice outward. However, that cooldown has been raised from 20 to 30 seconds upon each cast, but actually has a really nice buff here. Although not as large as the buff that Shattered Maiden got, it now has 2 uses as well instead of the 1. The duration will last 50% longer from 20 to 30 seconds with a cast speed increase of 50%. It now has a petrified damage increase as well. And the AoE frontal cone went from 40 meters to 60, with the rare cone also going from 15 to 30. And now it will do a full 60% slowdown across all movement states. I actually used to use Shattered Maiden back when the PvP freeze was kind of meta for a little while, or at least some players were using it in tandem with that shotgun. Seems like it might actually come back into play now. Zapcam also got a new charge here for the over-the-shoulder and ADS shot to deal damage, as well as the Mini Wonder actually got an AoE radius increase here to 9 meters. Alongside these buffs though were actually some nerfs. The first one actually happens to be to Pyro. Pyro's been very strong overall as a deviation, but now it did lose some damage from 50 to 40. Its ult damage was also decreased by 5, and the burn tick rate has also been reduced. They're probably not going to be taken as much anymore, although for the fire builds it still probably will come into play. Next up here, they have a deviation on the website they're calling Total Annihilation. I tried to look for the translation of this, but this was actually posted to the global client website first. It does look like this is a mistranslation for Xeno Purifier, at least from what I can pick up here, because it mentions dash and cooldown, and he is the only deviation that I could think of that actually does that. And Total Annihilation, when translated back into Chinese, actually does have slash and all in the word, and it does compound and evoke to an omnidirectional melee. So essentially the closer English alternatives are omni slash or all cleave. Again, correct me if I'm wrong there, but from all the research I could do, this does seem like it is for Xeno Purifier. And they did actually get their dash reduced from 22 meters to 16, so it isn't as potent. This thing is really strong in PvP. Surprised more people don't take it. It is kind of a nuisance to deal with. And the cooldown of it was also increased from 15 to 25 seconds, so it won't be slashing and dashing as much. We had one more nerf here, which was for Voodoo Doll. It no longer shields as much when you are using it over the shoulder. That decrease was from 200% down to 150, with the HP drain of it happening quite faster, so you see the tick rate will happen a lot quicker, so it won't last as long. And its ultimate heal / damage output per hit has been reduced. That was all the deviation changes there. These should, from what I gather, only apply to Raid Zone. So don't worry if you play another scenario, I don't believe these changes do apply. At least from what I've gathered here, it does mention that their combat experience and Raid Zone they've been monitoring. We'll have to wait and see though if it does apply to everything else. One of the 2 last mentions with this patch is they do mention that Raid Zone has NetEase's strictest anti-cheat. They even have device and IP bans that are happening with this one. And on top of that, they have legal action versus cheat sellers, which is actually pretty cool. This did happen with Fragpunk, where they infiltrated different cheat selling websites and they sued them and had them taken down with DMCAs. So they are proactive on this. And they do mention that if you report cheaters, you will get real rewards. So if you are finding people that do cheat, you should report them. And they are actually fairly proactive on it, whether it's Marvel Rivals or even Fragpunk. Again, NetEase does publish both of those games, and they are, from what I've seen, also very proactive on Once Human. So they are getting at that across the board. We had a few other mentions here with events and what's going on with the store and shop updates. So they did just finally unveil the Golden Surge Lightforged Loot Crate, which will be available soon. And this has the Gilded Summer set, as well as the Golden Radiance vehicle skin. Again, if you didn't luck out and get the GTR skin when that came out, you can potentially try to get this one. There are a few other cool things here, like a Waterfront Paradise furniture set and a Cradle cosmetic, and that Mermaid Territory collectible that I have gone over before. So a pretty decent offering for this one, and that does launch in just 1 to 2 days, depending on when you're watching this video. There is an event that actually is ending soon, which is the Dreamland Wonder event. So any of the rewards that you can earn from that will be going with it as well. I do believe that one is ending on either July 30th or the 31st, so be sure you are claiming those rewards sooner than later. Also, last up here, I figured I would mention this, but there is a developer live stream tonight. Depending on when I get this video out, though, it might have already been started or ended. I will include a link to that, though, so you can check it out. Overall, chill out cover for today's video. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and until the next one. Deuce!